Hey guys, Jeff here with Ghost Gaming, and hey, it's been almost a year since the Final Fantasy VII Remake has come out, and while we're still waiting to hear more details about Part 2, I've been playing a lot of the original Final Fantasy VII for the last little while, working my way through that one again for the who knows how many time, and it's got me really thinking about what's coming next in Final Fantasy VII Remake land. So I already did another speculation video previously, and I've got a link for it showing somewhere on the screen. But I'm going to take a little bit more of a look at what may come next and kind of look at what I think might happen. So obviously, because we're going to be talking a lot about the original Final Fantasy VII and how it may relate to the remake, there's going to be a ton of potential spoilers for the original game and some potential spoilers for the end of Final Fantasy VII Remake. So if you haven't played one of those and you don't want to lose out on some of that stuff, maybe wait until after you've played them. Come back here, check this out, and share your thoughts on my wild and crazy speculations in the comments below, and maybe we'll take a look back at this video whenever part 2 releases and part whatever releases, and we'll see how close we got. Alright, so starting off, we're going to take a look at the primary question is, where is part 2 going to take place? Like, we already know where Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1 ends. It ends when they leave Midgar. But in all honesty, that's only about 3 or 4 hours into what is potentially a 40-hour game. So that's a very small chunk of a very large experience, and they turn this into a 40-hour plus game, just these 3 hours. So we're kind of looking at, the first thing is, we're only looking up to the end of Disc 1, because we have some really major story stuff that happens at the end of Disc 1 that is going to shape how the rest of this remake process is going to take part. So we've got to look back, but we're also going to look a bit forward. So we end Final Fantasy VII Remake leaving Midgar. So that's when the game actually opens up in Final Fantasy VII, in the original. It opens up because you have that open area on your way to Calm Village and all that kind of stuff. But how much of Disc 1 is going to be in Part 2? And this is where it gets a little challenging, because we're looking at major plot story points. I mean, it was a big deal to leave Midgar and go out into this open world, because up until then, in your first few hours of the game, it's very compact. You're in these streets, you're in these buildings, you're in this underground, and you're going through Shinra Tower and all that kind of stuff. And now all of a sudden, open world, lots of places to explore. We have Calm, we have the Chocobo farm, and everything that comes beyond. But as far as I can tell, I think if they're going to portion it out in a way that is going to give a good story impact, there are 2 potential stopping points for Part 2. And once again, this is all speculation. Guys, definitely share your thoughts on it below, but there's going to be 2 things. Boarding the ship in Junon, or the events in Nibelheim. So there's 2 reasons for this one, because Junon, there's a major stuff that happens on the ship in Junon. There's the whole next encounter with Sephiroth there. Next major encounter with Sephiroth is on that ship. Plus, there's a lot of densely packed stuff that kind of happens in Junon that we can probably work with. Plus, we kind of don't know how much they're going to do with the other stuff, because now if we start breaking it down, so if we break this down, we look at this, the next major event that should happen in the remake, Part 2, is going to be Calm Village, where Cloud tells them about Nibelheim for the first time, about how it broke down. We've got hints of it in the remake in different sections where we see, the clip, the flashback to Nibelheim burning and Cloud looking at Sephiroth walking away while it's burning. But now we're going to get the story, or Cloud's take on the Nibelheim event that happened 5 years ago. There's a lot more that could potentially happen here, because obviously this is the first part where you kind of see Tifa going, wait, something doesn't add up here. Though she doesn't say anything. I get the feeling we might actually hear more about that in the remake, and they might go further in depth on that. But that's the only major event that happens in Calm. Whether there's more stuff that's going to happen, I get the feeling there will be. Now, our next major thing is finding the Chocobo Village, or the Chocobo Farm. What they're going to do with that, I don't know, because that leads up and it kind of segues into an important element with the Midgarzalem and the swamp. I get the feeling that is going to be a much larger section than it was this time. So instead of it being grab a chocobo, go over the marsh, and you're into the Mithril Caves, I think that's going to be a full-blown part of the story, and we might get some Final Fantasy 15 style stealth elements when you're hunting the big behemoth relatively early on in the game, or later on in one of the later chapters where you're doing some more stealth. We may get some of that in that particular bit, but we may get something completely different this time. It's hard to say, and of course that will culminate with the finding the remains of a Midgarzalem on the other side of the marsh that Sephiroth is apparently killed. Then we've got the events in the Mithril Cave. So the Mithril Cave will probably be a whole lot bigger as well in there. There will be more to do. Plus, we're going to get more more stuff with the Turks. I think we're going to get more. We're going to get more details. We're going to get introduced a little bit better to Elena, one of the newer members of the Turks. But I think largely that's all going to stay the same. I don't think there's going to be a huge amount of change to that. Now, that being said, once again, that's now we're starting to get into some optional material here. So as we get out of the Mithril Cave, there's two optional events that you don't have to do anything with. One doesn't come until later, but the other one is character related, and that's Yuffie. Yuffie shows up somewhere in one of the forests south of that location. So what are we going to do with her? I think, and this is actually a speculation for both Vincent and Yuffie, and if I'm saying her name wrong, I hope somewhere I get it said correctly. So pardon me on that one. But I think now it's reached the point that they've become canon. They are part of Cloud's team, part of that group of adventurers. At this point, some people are like, well, are they going to be optional characters? Are they going to be DLC? I think they're going to be canon characters that are going to happen. We are going to have an event that has us having to interact with Yuffie, and we're gonna get her into the party, or however that's gonna work. Whether she's gonna function like Red, and that's another thing I'm not sure of, is are we gonna be able to control Red in some way, shape, or form in Part 2? I'm hoping so. I really am, because yeah. So she's gonna be the next major character introduced. Then we also have Fort Condor. One, it has an interesting tower defense style mini game that I'm interested to see how they adapt it into the remake. I mean, they took the motorcycle scene, they took a couple of the squats, expanded on it, gave it another one for Tifa to work through. They did more with the Honeybee Inn. So I suspect that we're still going to get Fort Condor. It's still going to be there, but I think it might change whether it becomes something that they have to encounter on the way, because it'll be a great story element to see other aspects. And I think it'll also allow us to segue into more stuff with Avalanche, because one of the major changes for Avalanche in the remake is the fact that Avalanche is not just Barrett and friends anymore. It's a big global organization fighting Shinra, and there's more elements. There's the top. So I'm wondering if Avalanche is going to come into play and actually be more prevalent at Fort Condor than just being a bunch of guys that helped build the reactor and protecting the Condor. Now, I don't know how that's going to affect getting Phoenix, because we've already seen that several materia that show up much later, notably summons that show up much later in the original game, aren't going to show up at the same place anymore because they showed up already. We already have Bahamut, we already have Leviathan, and they didn't show up until, much later, right? I mean, Leviathan is near in these sections, but Bahamut is a little bit further off. So we'll see what happens there with that. Plus, we've got Cyborg Kid, our clone kid. I don't remember what he is, but our young fellow that's doing all the simulators, we're going to probably see more of him or something like him as we progress. So now we've gotten from there, we've got Fort Condor, we've got Yuffie, now we're in Junon. So this may be a several chapter section, because we have the under Junon. Whether we're going to still do the weird dolphin thing, I don't know. saving the girl and all that, that'll probably still happen because we need to make friends with them to be able to get in. But so there's that. There's the parade. There's the exploration to get onto the ship with Rufus and with Sephiroth. Now, like I said, this may be the stopping point for part two, but it may not be. Like I said, Nibelheim seems like a really good stopping point, stopping as they're crossing the mountains, because once and again, it's a really good transition. You know, something major and heavy has happened, and all that kind of stuff. So let's think about this. So major point in this game will probably be the ship trip, with everybody infiltrating the ship. This is probably going to look a whole lot different than it does in the original game. And then we have that encounter with Sephiroth and the next fight with Genova. Once again, very good point before we get into the next bit, because then we've got 3 major story points coming up after that as we get in here. So we get out of there, we get to Costa del Sol. This might be a great place for them to have some more fun side stuff, because, I mean, this is where in the OG game you encounter Hojo on the beach, and some weird stuff could potentially happen there. From there, it's off to Mount Coral. So you head to Mount Coral, and we have the major plot point where we discover about what happened to Coral and North Coral. Barrett's got a potential for a really good opportunity for some story moments to shine in this section. I mean, we got some great moments with him in the first part. This is another great moment for us to see more about him here. From there, we head into the Gold Saucer, where we're going to meet Cait Sith. So we already know Cait Sith is somewhere around here. We already know he's potentially going to be there. We'll see what happens there and what happens with the events when they get there. Then there's Sephiroth appearing in Gold Saucer, them going down below, and we have 2 things that can happen. Once again, more opportunity for Barrett with the whole dying storyline, with his best friend being kind of a psychopath at this point. And we also have Chocobo Racing. Now we can also see how they're going to do and handle that. I'm kind of looking forward to see what they do with the Chocobo Racing. I won't be able to hold all the buttons to save my stamina, but it should still be fun, and I think it'll be highly interactive. Then from there, it's after they complete all that, they get out of the Gold Saucer, get the buggy, then it's over to Nibelheim. So now we're going to see Vincent. Once again, I think Vincent is going to be integral to the Shinra Mansion, and he is not going to be an optional character. He is going to be, you're going to get him no matter what. But we have these major elements when they get to Nibelheim, and everything is as it was before 5 years ago when the whole place burnt down. So I'm hoping to see more than just small protestations from both Tifa and Cloud at Nibelheim being as it was, but a whole bunch of new people that they don't know being here. I'm hoping that they're going to go much deeper into the conspiracy, because if you actually do a little bit of digging in Nibelheim, you find that Shinra rebuilt the town from the ground up to make it look as it was, and then put a whole bunch of Shinra agents in to simulate that the town had never had anything bad happen to it. And nobody from the town has survived as far as they know. So Cloud and Tifa being back, this is a great character opportunity for the 2 of them. And I think they're going to go really deep into this, and this may be where part 2 ends. That being said, we're not done with Disc 1. There's a lot of stuff that can still go on, because right after that, we've got Cosmo Canyon, where I think, once again, that's going to go deeper. I'm both ready and not ready for Red 13 finding out more about his father, Seto. It's probably the most emotional part for me in Final Fantasy VII, and I think it's going to be even worse in the remake. I don't know if I'm ready for that, but I don't think they're going to change that one too much, because it's such a really good moment for Red, and I'm hoping we're going to get a lot, and that's going to be a Red-led story. Man, pardon the word rhyming and punning on that, but it's going to be very led by him, and we're going to see a lot of detail there, plus seeing the Cosmo thingy that Bugenhagen, yeah, that's his name, has. Plus, is he still going to be the floating weird old man that he is? I don't know. We're going to see how that goes. That may change. And then, of course, Rocket Town. Next is going to be Rocket Town. Next is going to be Sid. We've got the whole another moment with Palmer and Rufus there. How is that going to function? How are they going to work the? And once again, we're speculating. We're probably looking at part 3 for this one. But how they're going to do like traveling with the tiny Bronco, how that's going to affect the story. I actually really don't know how they're going to do the open world. I don't know if they're going to do it Final Fantasy 15 style or Final Fantasy 13 style with the open world, or even maybe Final Fantasy X with how they work the open world. I don't know how they're going to do it, how it's going to affect their very chapter heavy basis from part 1. That's going to change a lot of how these certain elements flow into each other, and also how long it's going to take to do certain segments, because obviously when you get into the open world, the game opens up and it takes a lot longer to progress because you're doing all this stuff. But with the remake, there's it doesn't look like there's going to be as much open world, so I don't know how that's going to go. Now, there's a lot of elements in here that are going to be interesting to see how they unfold, but I think the big one that we're looking at, especially now as we get closer to the end of Disc 1, is the major point, Aerith's death. In the original game, this is an inevitable thing, but we've already seen in Final Fantasy VII Remake that they're shattering destiny. They've seen glimpses of Aerith's death, of stuff like that happening, and it looks like they're set to change it. Something's going to happen, and I think the major factor, the more I think about it, the more I see cutscenes, the more I play through both games, I think Zack is the key to Aerith not dying at the end, where she would die at the end of Disc 1, or whichever part of the game, which would probably be end of Part 3, I want to say. Because otherwise there's a lot of game that they're just going to rush through, not getting as much of the treatment as they did in the first part, to get to that Disc 1 ending. Because Disc 1 ending stuff was like 10 plus hours in, so if we were doing the basic formula, they're doing 3 or 4 hour chunk already. You're looking at 3 parts just for Disc 1. Just for Disc 1. Disc 2 is a little bit shorter, or at least it feels a bit shorter. Disc 3 is elongated by the leveling that is being done. So Disc 1 is definitely the meatiest of the discs, if I find. Where there's elements of Disc 2 that get meaty, but we're going to get to that much, much later once we see different parts getting released. But yeah, I think Zack, if Zack is alive, the whole him walking to Midgar is a thing, and he actually survived the incident, I think he may be key. We might be getting some story elements in Part 2 and Part 3 of him, or more about him, and I think he's the key, because I don't think Cloud is going to be able to break the influence that the Genova cells have on him, and the things that Sephiroth is going to be able to make him do, unless we see a vast change on how that functions once we start getting into those elements. But definitely Zack is not as shackled down, I think, and we've seen that through the events of Crisis Core, whether that still remains canon to this, or whether they're going to be working on a remaster of Crisis Core that deals with these story changes. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff coming Final Fantasy related that we're all kind of like really holding our breath trying to find out. But I think Zack is the key, because at this point, my simple speculation is this: they've really heavily implied, no more is it kind of ambiguous as to whether Cloud is in a relationship with Tifa or Aerith. Aerith is definitely, more of the friend, that cared for friend, but that friend. Tifa is, as best we can look at, is Cloud's love interest. Tifa, Cloud is Tifa's love interest. Aerith is still, all about Zack. And I think with all of the elements of Advent Children carrying on to it, other media related to it, and just fandom in general, everybody goes Aerith and Zack, Cloud and Tifa, or at least a lot of people do. And we're going to see that element come into play, and we may just have a dramatic arrival and potentially a new party member in Zack Fair. I don't know. Like I said, this is all very speculative. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this and got through my rambling okay, and aren't shaking your fists angrily at your screen too much. If you have theories on what you think the first disc, we're just looking at the first disc, so let's look at that first disc. let's start a discussion down in the comments below. Let me see your ideas on it, because you know what, we don't know yet, and no ideas is too far-fetched as what they've already done with what they've changed with the remake. We've got a lot of stuff to look at. There's the whole there's a good chance all those the Avalanche members have survived, and who knows when they're going to show up again in the game. We know at least one is recovering. We don't know about one, and the other one, well, he was thrown out a window, but well, that didn't stop him getting thrown off a pillar and surviving. So who knows? And there's so many other elements that could be uh, brought in, things that are getting expanded, characters that are getting more details, new characters getting brought in. We've still got Roche somewhere out there. Who knows what he's going to do? Who knows what the other soldiers are doing at this point? You know, if we're seeing one soldier, who's to say we're not going to see other ones? So thank you very much for checking this out, guys, and thank you for being patient with my ramblings. Hopefully you enjoyed checking this out. We'll be back again talking about Final Fantasy more when we see what's going on with the part 2 of the remake, and maybe beyond. Once the second remake is out, we'll take a bigger look at that, and of course I'll be streaming it over on my Twitch channel. So if you want to talk games, talk speculations, talk Final Fantasy and all that kind of stuff, definitely check out my Twitch channel, where you can talk to me live most of the week. And check out my other videos here on the channel. We've got top 10s, we've got movie reviews, and more. Thank you for joining me. Have fun, keep gaming, and I'll see you guys again next time.